Let's have our two speakers, Robin Steans and Bill Daley. Round of applause, please. There you go. No. Anyways, I think what we'll do is let you guys run it. You'll have, take 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll have questions from the audience. And if you want a question, or want to ask a question, make sure you fill out the official question form, print, write legibly, and terse is not worse. So you guys take it over.
Right. Thanks very much, Paul. And let me first start off by thanking the City Club for their invitation for us to be here this morning. And obviously, City Club has been an institution in this community for many, many years, bringing together civic, political, business leaders, and presenting forums for serious discussion of issues that affect our community and our state. And so, Jay, you've done a hell of a job leading this organization. We really appreciate it, and there's always a testament at 7:30 in the morning to see so many people up. But again, it's a statement about our belief in this community, and we thank you and all the elected officials who are here today. Robin and I thank you for being here. Let me start off by saying John Edwardson, who is the co-chair of Advance Illinois, is not with us. He's in India with one of his daughters who's working there on behalf of people in enormous need, and so he couldn't be with us. But he has provided great leadership to this organization. And so I'm sorry he's not here today, because he really should be presenting this report with Robin because of the enormous work he's put in on behalf of the children of Illinois. I stand here today as a father, a grandfather, a citizen, and a business person, as each of you who believes truly in the transformation power of public education. I also stand here in my role as one of the founding co-chairs of Advance Illinois, which is an organization that for 5 years now has been an independent, objective voice promoting a public education system that prepares all Illinois students to be ready for college, career, and democratic citizenship. That's with a small d, Kirk, so nobody should get too excited. I speak for my colleagues on the Advance Illinois board in saying that we believe that education reform is not and should not be a partisan issue. Let me at this point acknowledge, and you will see the names of all the board members on the screen. But let me acknowledge and ask to stand a few of the board members who are with us today. Judy Irwin, Tim Knowles, Rick Stevens, Gene Reinecke, Lou Collins, Jim Franzik, and Miguel DeValier, who was one of the founding board members, and Patricia Watkins, Senator Watkins also. Jim Edgar and myself, Jim, who is now a college professor, myself and several others, many of whom are here today, came together in 2008 to help found Advance Illinois because we understood the urgent need to improve our public schools if we are to open the doors of opportunity for all students. We also understand that the strength of our state rests inexorably on the strength of our public education system. It is this belief that led us to create the comprehensive report card on Illinois public education that we are releasing today. Now, some of you, like me, may have been in previous life when we were in school a little frightened of report cards. Matter of fact, I divert for a moment here. In 1992, when Bill Clinton became president, I was asked if I would be interested in being in the cabinet, and I had to go through a vetting process. And Bill Clinton in that year decided that he wanted transcripts of your high school, your college, any postgraduate. And I was like, are you serious? So out of great fear that somehow this would become public, and my children, who I used to, two of whom are here today, who I would constantly harass about doing better in school, would see exactly what their father did. So I actually kind of made a deal with them that, look, if I give you this stuff, you must. And I had to go to Ignatius, and I had to go to Loyola and law school, and I tried to make a deal that they would not in any way, shape, they would guarantee me that they would not be public. So for those of you who have that same sort of fear, trust me, this is not about you. It's about our kids, our grandkids who are in this school system throughout the state of Illinois. Please know we had a lot of help, obviously, identifying what measures to report and then gathering the data. Both were big undertakings, and we are deeply indebted to the advisory council that put many hours and lots of brain power into getting this right. The full list is on the back of the cover of the report, and I want to recognize the institutional support of the Illinois Board of Education, the Illinois Board of Higher Education, and the Illinois Community Colleges Board, and call out those members that may be here this morning. Emily Crone of the Consortium on Chicago School Research, Elliot Regensten, co-chair of the Early Learning Council Data and Research Committee and Ounce Prevention Fund, Pat Ford, Steans Family Foundation, Dia Meyer, Civic Committee of the Commercial Club, David Schuler, the Superintendent Township High School District 214 in Arlington Heights, Sarah Slaughter of the McCormick Foundation, and finally, let me recognize the outstanding work from the entire Advanced Illinois team, with special mention to Ben Bear, Lara Catton, Clara Metzger, Jim O'Connor, and Tara Malone, and of course, our leader, Robin Steans. The state we're in 2012 assesses our state's academic performance from early childhood through post-secondary, examining how students progress through the entire educational system. The sheer scope of the analysis is what makes this report so unique. We're releasing this report now for 3 reasons. First, it is easy to think narrowly about Illinois educational health, looking at the latest round of test scores as the lone litmus test. But test scores are just one of the array of factors to consider in examining how our state's public education system serves 2 million students every single day. As a state, we must make informed, clear-eyed decisions about how best to support our students, our teachers, and our schools, particularly in this era of budget constraints, which are so severe. Second, the findings in this report remind us of the need to strengthen our public education system and improve both outcomes and opportunities for the kids. It also gives us a baseline against which to measure our state's future progress. Third, for the first time in a very long time, Illinois has a broad reform plan that aims to strengthen the school system from top to bottom, and this is good news, and it does bode well for our state's future. And we must thank the legislators who had the courage to pass this reform package and the governor for signing the package in 2011. Led by State Superintendent Chris Cook and his team, Illinois has put in place meaningful reforms that aim to prepare every child for college and career. And we will delve into the specifics of this later this morning. But passing a bill or launching an initiative is the easy part. The work ahead requires careful and cooperative implementation, and the impact on student achievement does take time. We all know this. But if we do not build upon these reforms and see them through, then our state will continue to see the mediocre results that we've been seeing for quite a long time. And that's unacceptable. Our students throughout the state of Illinois deserve better. Before we delve into the report's findings, I'd offer some context for what you're about to hear. Across Illinois today, 8 out of every 10 jobs require some education or training beyond high school. Again, that's 8 out of 10 jobs require something beyond a high school certificate. Yet fewer than 4 out of 10 Illinois adults hold a 2 or a 4-year degree, which leaves thousands of jobs unfilled every year because employers cannot find employees with the skills that they need. Now more than ever, education makes all the difference in an economy that grows more competitive every single year. Last year, folks with a high school diploma but no advanced education or training took home less than 1.5 in weekly earnings than those who held a bachelor degree. They also had nearly double the rate of unemployment. Staggering statistics. And as so many of you in this room are business leaders, you understand the impact to your companies and the future efforts you may want to expand in Illinois with these sort of numbers. And in the 21st century, when jobs move easily around the globe, we now lag many other countries who we would deem to be our true competitors in overall educational levels. Several industrialized countries already have surpassed our high school completion rates and are on track to surpass our post-secondary attainment as well. In this measure, Illinois trails countries such as Canada, Israel, Japan, and Russia. Some people might question why we would compare ourselves to countries around the world. Why wouldn't we just be comfortable with comparing ourselves to states, not only throughout the country, but maybe even just in the Midwest? Again, as business leaders, you know the future. You know the real competition that these kids will face as they come out into the workforce. And it is a global world we live in, and we have to accept that. And we have to understand that the true competitors are the countries of the world, and we cannot be satisfied just doing better or even with an Indiana or a Michigan or even a Massachusetts. Let me at this point turn this over to our leader, our executive director, Robin Steans, who will go through the report. And again, thank her for her leadership, the tremendous job that she has done over the last 5 years to take Advance Illinois to a truly important national advocacy group on behalf of our kids. Thank you.
Good morning. It's really terrific that so many of you got up on a very brisk and blustery fall morning, and it just so happens, in addition to being executive director of Advance Illinois, I am a Chicago public school parent, so I happen to know today is report card pickup day, at least for the high schools. I think my children are about as excited about that, Bill, as you were. They're home sleeping in celebration of the occasion. And so while we didn't plan to do this that day, we think it's entirely appropriate that we reflect on the job we're doing as adults for the educational opportunities we're providing kids, even as they're getting feedback on their studies. So I am going to, is this working? You'll just do it. All right. What I'm going to do is also, in addition to being a parent, I'm a former teacher, so I want to give you a quick starter assignment to make sure you're all on task. What everybody should have had a report at your seat. Could you open it to page 3? And if you've done your task correctly, you will see this ladder. And I'm going to ask that you keep that open while I walk you through. What this is the ladder to readiness. These are the steps that we want every Illinois student to successfully climb before they, in order to be successful in citizenship and in life. We want everyone to start school kindergarten ready. We want them to be reading proficiently by 3rd or 4th grade. We want them to make a smooth transition to high school with real skills coming out of 8th grade. We want them not just to finish high school, but to finish it really, truly ready for work or for further training in school. We want them to actually enroll in further school or training, and then we want them to succeed and earn some sort of a degree. And so the question is, how are we doing? I'm going to walk us through them, but leave that ladder open if you would. And I'm hoping that you've had your coffee by now, because I'm about to hit you with a lot of statistics, and unfortunately some of them are sobering. But my pledge to you is that for every bit of bad news, I'm going to try and balance that with something that's good, some good news, and something that's hopeful. So by the end, you're more inspired than discouraged. You'll let me know how I did. So first, let's take a look at early childhood. Our kids starting school, kindergarten readiness. Everybody here knows, I hope by now, that it's the cornerstone of good educational success is getting a strong early start. And the good news is Illinois has made real progress with Preschool for All. We've made a real investment in making sure that 3- and 4-year-olds have access to early childhood. 20% of 3-year-olds, 29% of 4-year-olds, in fact, are in state-funded pre-K programs. That makes us a leader in the country, and that's terrific news. So important do we think that is? We're the first state in the country to say we're going to guarantee bilingual placement in early childhood for students who need it. And it's critical we do this because gaps start early. Gaps start as early as before you hit kindergarten. Kids who live in poverty are already 14 months behind. So we should all be a little worried that while we've made big strides in access, that is under attack. We cut $25 million from this year. It doesn't show up in your report because it's current year, not last year. We cut $25 million from the early childhood budget. That's close to an 8% cut. So that's something we're going to obviously need to focus on and pay attention to going forward. But the reality is, at the end of the day, we actually don't know how ready kids are when they start kindergarten. We don't know because we have never historically collected that information. We've never taken a developmentally appropriate look to see where kids are cognitively, emotionally, socially, and otherwise as they make that critical transition. But, and here's the good news, first bit of good news, we're starting to correct that. We're piloting in 36 districts, 5,000 students, a kindergarten readiness measure, developmentally appropriate. Training has gone really, really well. It's off to a strong start. And so over the ensuing years, as we roll that out around the state, we are looking forward to being able to report back to families, to schools, to policymakers, how we're doing at that very important first step and how that means we ought to be adjusting the investment that we've been making in those early years. The second thing that we like to look at is how are kids doing when they hit the very important third or fourth grade. We use fourth grade only because it's a better assessment. We use the national assessment, but you want kids reading proficiently by third grade or fourth grade. They should be moving from reading to learn to learning to read at that juncture. And as you can see, 33%. Only 33% of our kids are getting where we need them to be by that critical early juncture, and that should worry us all for a couple of reasons. One, that's the single most powerful, reliable indicator of long-term success, is that number. So right now, only a third of our kids are on a trajectory for long-term success, to finish high school, to make it through some post-secondary, and to be really ready for work. It's disturbing for two other reasons. One, that number hasn't moved. This year, the last report, I know you all read it closely, every last detail, and you know we only looked back 2 years. This time we looked back 10 years. And you'll see, if you look in your report, because I know you're going to read it every night for the next week, going through the next little bit of information, you'll see we only moved from 31% to 33% in 10 years. That's disturbing. And the second thing that's disturbing is if you peel back these averages, what you see is we've got really serious gaps. Just 12% of African American students, 18% of Latino students are reading by grade level in third or fourth grade. That's shocking. If you look at low income numbers, it's equally bleak. You've got 16% of low income students reading at grade level compared to 49%. So, and again, those haven't moved in 10 years and they make us among the worst in the nation. We're either 5th, 9th, or 10th worst in those gaps. So one of the other things we did, and this is a special for you who made it up on this blustery morning, the next slide if you would, Tara. We got a lot of questions last time. Well, how does Chicago compare? Are they dragging us down? Now, you know Chicago has a particularly high concentration of low-income students and students with risk factors. So you'd expect that they're probably a little behind the state. And if you see, that's in fact the case. These are the third grade reading numbers, fourth grade reading numbers, for the Chicago Public Schools. It's at 19%, moved up to 21% this year compared to a third for the state. But if you consider what the numbers were for African American, Latino, and low-income students, you can see Chicago has actually been making some real moves in the right direction, though Lord knows nobody is cheering or resting on laurels. Let's take a look at 8th grade. That transition from middle school to high school is quite important. Turns out one of the single best predictors of who's going to stay in high school and finish is whether they finish their freshman year having passed their core courses and on track to promote to sophomore status. The Consortium on Chicago School Research gave us that information. So that transition, coming in really ready to go, is quite critical. So we looked, here we're going to look at 8th grade math. The truth is 8th grade math and reading are quite similar. You want kids ideally finishing algebra. That's what the new Common Core standards are going to require, but you want them proficient. Again, just a third. Just a third of our students are where they ought to be. Note there's an awful consistency here, which is not accidental. So a third of our students where they should be, again, has not moved. It's moved a little bit, but again, nothing that's going to get us where we need to go over the next 10 years. And again, it masks pretty significant achievement gaps. If you look at African American Latino students versus their white counterparts, and if you look at low-income students versus non-low-income counterparts, we've got a lot of ground to make up. I will say that there is a bright spot. So I'm committed to telling you the bright spots, which is we actually were one of the only 4 states who closed the achievement gap somewhat between minority students and white counterparts in math over the last 10 years. So that's nothing to sneeze at. That's important work. And if you look here at the next slide, once again, special bonus treat for you all. Here's the Chicago information, but notice here, Chicago moved from 17% to 23% of their students computing on grade level in 8th grade, compared to the state, which was flat at 33. That is a significant, you can't even chalk that up to statistics or test change. That is simply statistically significant movement and progress on the part of Chicago, which is, I know, come with a great deal of effort. So that is a bit of bright spot and good news, though again, I don't think anybody thinks that only 23% of our children ready to go in 8th grade is anything to write home about. So the next thing that we pay attention to and care about is how are students doing? Oh, one other bright spot. Look, I almost missed that. Thank you, Tara. It's pretty important and it's a good indicator if kids are taking and mastering algebra in 8th grade. And again, that's where we're moving as an entire system in a nation with new academic standards that are rolling out. But you'll notice the other bit of good news is the number of students in Chicago and around the state who are taking algebra in 8th grade has moved up to 45%. That's been a steady increase, and that's good and that's promising, particularly because it's been matched with, I believe, and soon we will know with better data, mastery. So, all right, so on to high school. So what we want to know, you'll notice on that ladder, we don't do high school graduation rates. I'll tell you later, there's bad news there, by the way. We're our lowest rates in 10 years. Because we care not just about whether kids graduate, but what you care about as parents, what you care about as employers, certainly what my husband and I care about as parents is, did my child not just graduate, but did they graduate with actual skills that they're going to need? And the good news in Illinois, another bit of good news, we're one of 9 states where every child, just by virtue of being in public high school, as a junior, they take the Prairie State exam. If you're a high school parent, you're nodding, you've seen this. Embedded in that exam is a college entrance exam, the ACT, which means every child takes that, they've got an ACT entrance exam in their back pocket. More on that since the writing assessment actually has created a wrinkle. But nonetheless, that means for every kid, we know academically whether they've hit college-ready benchmarks. Because the ACT, quite cleverly, follows kids from high school with their scores into college, and they see, well, what score did you have to have in order to have at least a 75% chance of earning a C, or if you're my husband and I, at least a 50% chance of earning a B. We've got a college freshman now. And you can see they set college benchmarks in each of the 4 subject areas they test, English, math, reading and science. So what percent of our kids are graduating high school with at least 3, meeting at least 3 of those 4 benchmarks? 27%. 27%. And I think that it turns out it matters enormously that you hit at least 3 of those 4, and let me show you why. If you meet 3 of the 4, and you go on to post-sec, you've got a just by meeting them, you've got a 75% chance of going on to complete some post-secondary degree. If you only meet 1 or 2, you've got less than a 50% chance of going on to earn some post-secondary. And if you don't meet any, you've got less than a 15% chance. So it turns out that meeting those 4 is extraordinarily important, and we're clearly not doing well enough. And as Bill mentioned, remember, 8 out of 10 jobs require some amount of training beyond high school. So we have to care what percent are going on to earn some amount of training beyond high school. For every 100 Illinois students who begin 9th grade, question we should all care about is how many of them are going to make it all the way through post-secondary. We want to know longitudinally, if I start as a 9th grader, what are your odds of going on and earning that degree that 8 out of 10 kids are going to need? And the answer is 29%. Now, the state has set a goal. The state's P20 Council. P means pre-kindergarten, 20 is grade 20. This is all the state agencies that deal with education, business leaders, civic leaders, elected officials, some of whom are in the room, outside advocacy groups, et cetera. The goal for the state is at least 60%, so we've got to at least double that number. But notice this. Notice how correlated the number of kids who are completing with college-ready skills and the number who, in fact, go on to complete. It's almost perfectly correlated, and because there's a longitudinal analysis behind it, turns out that's not accidental. You wouldn't expect it to be, but here's what you should notice too. 55% of kids actually enroll. They've got the message. We're close to the number that we actually are setting our goal. They're actually enrolling. But when you don't have the skills, what happens is you end up taking a bunch of remedial classes. You'll see in the report about 49% of kids take remedial classwork. That's very discouraging. You pay for those classes, you don't get any credit, you drop out. So we need to make sure the kids are finishing ready to go. All right, very quickly, I'm going to run you through how this translates into grades, because Many members of the Advanced Illinois Board are former teachers, as I am myself. We can't resist grading things. You should see our board meetings. And so let's take a quick look. So at early childhood, what we did is we looked at all the measures. So the ladder just gives you some of the highlights. But if you look, and I really do encourage you to look, we do try to take a broad look in each of those subject areas. And so there's a lot of different metrics that we think the state and that families and that leaders need to be paying attention to. And if we average, we grade it on a curve because we're nice people. If we rated ourselves against other states and we rated in the top 10 on average on all those metrics we use in each of those areas, the state earned an A. If you were in the next round of 10, we earned a B, and so on. So in early childhood, drum roll please, we got an incomplete, which I know is very disappointing and very big letdown, and that's what we got 2 years ago too. Why? Because as we mentioned, we don't know. If we don't know how kids are really doing in that make transition, how can we possibly give a grade that's meaningful? So we're going to come back, we're going to get that information, we're working on it, and we hope to have things to report to you next time. Let's go to K-12. We got a C-. That is up from a D. Now, you're all scratching your heads. Now, if you drank your coffee, you're scratching your heads. You're saying, Robin, you just told us we didn't really make any improvements. How is it that we moved up? I'm going to even add and say, we this time, and we weren't able to last time, we graded ourselves and factored into the grade our achievement gaps, which you also heard are among the worst in the country. Not in any case are we better than among the 10 worst. How is it that we did better? Well, to answer that question, I have to tell you a quick thing about demographics in Illinois. Both in the state and around the country, the poverty and the number of children with other risk factors has been increasing. For the first time this year, more than half of Illinois schools have at least 40% low-income students that they're serving. That's the first time that's ever happened. Almost half of the 2 million children we serve every day are low income. We're not the only state that dealt with that. So what happened is other states facing similar demographic changes slid. We didn't. We either held steady, or as you heard, there might have been some marginal gains. And just by holding steady with a more at-risk population, we improved our standing nationally. And that's not nothing to sneeze at. It is not where we need to be. I think that's clear. But it's not worth nothing that with a lot of hard work and dedication out in the field, despite a greater and higher need out in the schools, that we've managed to hold our own. And then lastly, at the higher education level, and remember, this is not really for institutions. This is how well are we doing in helping kids make sure that they make it through. We got a C+, which is up a little bit from a C. Some of the main factors there that are really, obviously, the amount of readiness that we're sending our kids into post-secondary is enormously important. If you go on our website, you'll see by institution how well institutions are doing graduating kids within their own college. But one of the other things that's really a concern and should be for the state is how expensive it's gotten. It's 21% of a family of four's income to send a kid to a public four-year institution, which makes us one of the least affordable states in the country. So if we want to hit that 60% number, we've got a lot of work to do at every level. But with that, there is still some additional good news, and I get to turn that back to Bill to go through that.
Thank you very much, Robin. I know there may be a few of you out there, or a few of us in this room, who getting an incomplete or a C- or a C+ was a good day. But as we all know, as I mentioned earlier, the world we now live in, that is just not good enough. And because of the competitive world, we cannot accept this for the children of Illinois. And we certainly are not doing enough for the kids of low-income families, the African-American families and Latino families. And the statistic and the fact that Robin mentioned, that over half of the schools now in our state have at least 40% or more of challenged students from low-income communities, is a statistic that our system must deal with. Obviously, we've gone through a very difficult economic crisis over the last couple of years, which has pushed many people into that situation. But this is a statistic that the policymakers, the legislators, all of us must deal with statewide. This report grades Illinois, as was mentioned, on a curve relative to the other states. Never has the limitation of this been more apparent. And while these numbers improved rather slightly in the past decade, Illinois' national standing improved only because, as Robin mentioned, other states lost ground. This does not change the fact that we must do better for the students of our state, and I don't know anyone who will accept these levels of performance. Despite these challenges, there is reason for encouragement, and there is reason for optimism. Since we last reported on the state of Illinois public education, our state has continued to advance important reforms with the driving goal of improving the outcomes and opportunities for all students, not just top-scoring kids in top-scoring schools, but struggling kids in struggling schools. Illinois educators, legislators, policymakers, and those of us in the education advocacy community are working to strengthen the educational system through a comprehensive set of reforms. While lasting improvement takes time, it is too soon to see the impact on student achievement. Illinois is on its way and can succeed if we build upon the reforms. And these may include, for example, providing a strong early start to young children in need. This is one of the most powerful opportunities that we have to close this achievement gap before it even starts. And we must continue to build upon our early work in this area. Creating a developmentally appropriate method to gauge whether students are academically, socially, and emotionally ready for kindergarten. This isn't a paper or a pencil test, and this isn't about high-stakes exams. Rather, this is about knowing what kids bring with them when they walk in the door and what we need to do as adults to meet them where they are. Administering school surveys of teachers and students about the learning conditions and climate within schools statewide for the first time. 2 decades of survey research in Chicago public schools tell us that schools with the 5 essential elements for school success: ambitious instruction, collaborative teachers, effective leaders, supportive environments, and involved families, probably more than anything, involved families, are significantly more likely to improve students' achievements. Now, you may say that's rather basic, each of those, but the truth is they are basic, but they're also true. Raising expectations for students with the new Common Core state standards and the exams that accompany them. Next year, the Illinois State Board of Education will reset the cut score on state assessments to give students and their families better feedback on whether they are on track to graduate college and be career ready. The results will be dramatic. Far fewer students will pass, and while this will not be welcome news, it is important news. We need to be candid with students, with their families, about where they stand and where they need to go if they are to succeed in high school and therefore succeed beyond. Increasing expectations for teachers candidates and creating evaluations for teachers and principals that provide meaningful support and also feedback. An effective teacher generates 5 to 6 more months of student learning each year than an ineffective teacher. So it behooves us all to recruit, support, and develop top-notch teachers in all of our schools. Revising school report cards to help families better understand how schools and districts serve our students and where they can and should get involved. Those will be released next fall, the fall of 2013. And building a longitudinal data system that tracks how students progress over time and identifies where gaps and challenges may persist. Whether as parents or policymakers, this long view is how we need to think about our state school system and how that system serves students. In our first report card on the state of the public education, we identify the driving challenge before our state to provide every student with an education that prepares him or her for today's world. Whether we read the educational research or draw from our own observations, we know that all children can achieve if we as adults provide the support and services to them. So the real question for those of us who are gathered today and throughout the state is, will we provide that? In closing, I would like to acknowledge the expertise, the efforts, and dedication of Illinois education leaders, many of whom who are with us today. Julie Smith from the Governor's Office, Jeff Oberzit and Elaine Johnson from the Community College Board, Diana Rauner from the Ounce of Prevention Fund, Miguel DeValle, who was also a founding board member of Advance Illinois, and Amber Kirchhoff from the P20 Council, Jesse Ruiz and Andy Zapp from the Chicago Board of Education, and of course, the legislative leaders who stood up earlier, Barbara Flynn Curry, Heather Steans, Daniel Biss, Bob Pritchard, Darlene Sanger, and Kirk Dillard. We thank you, Robin and I, and all the board members, John Edwardson, all of us, thank you for being here this morning. And Robin and I, we thank you for your support, your interest, and we will be happy to answer questions that you may have on the report. Thank you very much.
Okay. City Club B will be passing among you. Oh, gee. Okay, Bill, welcome to the big leagues. Here we go. The person wrote on the sheet of paper the official question form, so you know this is true. Here we go. In 1970, your dad allowed a school strike for the first time. The result was, as a teacher, I realized the only thing lower on the totem pole than the teachers were the students. Every strike is usually settled with money, not what is really important. There is no question there. I guess it's a statement. If you want to comment, you can go ahead. This is from Brian Sucher, Hanover Park.
I would think some teachers would think the money is important. So I'm not sure that money isn't important when there's a strike. Obviously, the last thing anybody wants is a strike. We had one here for the first time in over 25 years. And for the parents, the children, the teachers, it is not a happy experience. For some people on the sidelines, they may find that an entertaining event. But for our community, it's a failure when a strike happens, let's be honest. But these are tough times. So, yeah, my dad went out of his way for his 21 years to avoid strikes. And to work with teachers and the union and parents and community. But these are very difficult times financially for governments and school districts. And I just think the cooperative spirit that's in this room has to be reflective in negotiations. But I think it's money, it's conditions. And let me just make a comment. Advance Illinois is proud of the fact that all the groups we work with. There are lots of groups out there that do great things in advocacy, but one of the unique things, the most unique thing about Advance Illinois is we work with every group, whether charter schools, teachers, business people. That's what we were founded upon, that principle, as an independent organization, and that's what we've done.
Okay. Robin, this is for you. This is from John Dunn. What role do you see technology in improving education?
Boy, that's a big question, and there are lots of different opportunities for that. From allowing for more personalized instruction to getting us away from having to invest a lot of money in textbooks that become out of date, every 2 years. I mean, the online textbooks are amazing, and the way that you can sort of do adaptive materials and interact with other teachers to pull together lesson plans, not just looking at textbooks, but all sorts of real-time. It's really endless, and it's limitless if you can afford to make sure you've got the right infrastructure in your schools. I will say that is a corner we're going to have to round as a state, because the new assessments that are coming that will go along with the Common Core are going to be given online, which is the first time that we've done that as a state. And so the hope is that we'll have, once you've got reliable infrastructure in schools, the horizons that opens up are ones we're going to be much readier and more capable of taking advantage of. But really, the sky's the limit. And potentially also with big cost savings once you've made the upfront investment.
Okay, this is from Mark Willermeyer, who tries to couch this by saying he's a fellow St. Ignatius graduate, Bill. So, be ready for a sandbag.
Maybe they can compare report cards.
Yeah, it's gonna be a sandbag. Just so you know, my brother-in-law went to St. Ignatius, and I'm familiar. Okay, would you support the defined benefits and contributions with new teachers in IRAs or 401ks?
Look at, obviously, most public employees have had defined benefit plans. Most of the private sector has gone to defined contribution plans. That's just a given. Obviously, if you're in a defined benefit plan, you want to hold on to that. They are extremely costly, and we're seeing that. And we either have to face up to the enormous cost of that, which the legislature must do, as the legislators know here, or else what will happen, and what is happening, is it begins to strangle everything else that legislators, policymakers, the people of Illinois, or the city, or school districts want done. And so we're getting down to the basic sort of questions here. But most of the private sector has gone to defined contributions for the fact that it is so costly to those companies and your ability to move and move quickly. You have a very long tail on a defined contribution plan. Doesn't mean that a defined contribution plan has to be punitive in any way, shape, or form to an employee. But those are tough decisions, and obviously those people have earned their benefits, but the hard work that they've done deserve them. And we've got to acknowledge that, but at the same time, deal with what is becoming a stranglehold on many governments throughout the country. It's not unique to Illinois, not unique to Chicago. If you believe in progressive things that government can do, then you've got to find the resources to do them. And that's tough in our system right now.
Okay. Robin, this is for you from Charlie Mangini, our trumpet player and also the president of Vandercook School. In these days of PAC media blitzes, I guess we all know what those are, what's the chance to launch a campaign to inform parents of this information and what they need to do to educate their children?
I love that question.
Well, you may have it.
We actually, thank you so much for asking that. Boy, good questions and a good trumpet player. You're a Renaissance man. We actually, one of the things that Advance Illinois cares about enormously is, as you heard, we think it's very encouraging the state has a comprehensive plan. But frankly, if people are not aware of what it is, and if we don't stay the course both on the legislative side, and if parents don't understand what's happening so that they can really do their part, we're not going to get where we need to go. So we've actually been working with a statewide coalition of the PTA, teachers unions, management groups, United Way, grassroots organizations to do community communications around many of these. We're starting with the Common Core, which are these new standards. As you heard Bill mention, the state is likely to be resetting the passing rates on the ISAT, and this spring, people are going to get a rude awakening because the numbers we show here, right now we say on the ISAT that about 86% of people are where they should be in third grade, and that ain't true. It's closer to the numbers you heard today, and that's what we're going to see when the test scores, the cut scores get reset. And if parents don't understand what's happening and why, you can only imagine what's going to happen out at every school. So we're working really hard with stakeholders from around the state to make sure that we get good information out to parents about those changes, why they matter, what they can do. It's great, right? Because it gets parents involved earlier. They can understand there's a problem when their kid's in third grade and not wait till junior year. We're doing the same on the new state report cards, working on kindergarten readiness. And so once we've got the coalition in motion, there's no stopping us. So we're working really hard on that because we think that's critical.
Okay. If you don't think this is a multi-ethnic society, listen to this one. This is for you, Bill. Sean McGrady. Got it? Okay. Board president.
Is he from Ignatius?
Don't jump the gun. Board president of St. Agnes of Bohemia School. You know, in Bohemian tradition, there are many McGradys. So here we go. Just throw that in to lighten it up a little. Does Advance Illinois consider acknowledging private schools participate in public education, and is expanded parental school choice something Advance Illinois considers?
Look, we're all in this together. This is not, we are focused on public education. That is the main, 2 million, as was mentioned, 2 million kids a day are in our public school systems. That's what we focus on. But the private institutions add to the quality of education and the quality of work. So yes, we acknowledge it, but our task as in Advance Illinois is to deal with and be helpful and honest about what's going on in the system that the taxpayers pay for and that the vast majority of our kids come through. Many of us were privileged to go to private schools, and they provide an enormous advantage to kids and to many low and challenged students in our state. But the fact is, Advance Illinois is focused on the system that provides the best opportunity for the most kids and must provide the best opportunity for the most kids in order to succeed as a society and an economy. We cannot think that the private schools can carry the burden, nor should they. It is their public system that's been at the heart of making America a great country over these years and a unique thing that this country began, and that is providing education as a right to every kid. And that's one of the things that makes this country unique, and we will never get away from that. We're focused on that.
This is for you, Robin. This is from Darcy Yvonne. Am I getting close? UIC. Does the report include, this report includes Chicago charter schools? How do charter schools compare to non-charter schools in Chicago?
So because charter schools are public schools, that data is included here, but it's included in an aggregate way. We don't even pull out Chicago, except for those special bonuses I gave you here this morning, and there will be some pull-out information on our website. And so the report really doesn't dive into looking at charters versus mainstream schools. There are other reports that do that.
Okay, 2 more questions. Either one of you guys can answer this one. From Judith Turk, who, of course, Ms. Paris, why aren't the owners of businesses giving a year or so specific training in areas they need instead of students going for advanced degrees that will not lead to jobs?
Can I take? Actually, there's really an exciting initiative that's going on in schools around the state, and it's getting started. I'm sorry Jeff Mays and Jason Tishko aren't here this morning, but there are, the Illinois Pathways Initiative is creating what are called learning exchanges in high school, and what those are they're college-ready strands of study that also give kids career certificates by the time they finish high school. So by the time they finish, they not only have a diploma that could allow them to get into any post-secondary institution and be ready, they also have a career-honored and career-recognized certificate so they can go immediately into a job. That's exciting. And that's also been, and Rick Stevens, actually, I should comment, has been a huge supporter and leader in that work from Boeing. And that is truly exciting. And so there are a number of those learning exchanges already up and running and developed. There are still more that are underway. But that is one of the things that kids say over and over again as a reason for dropping out. One of them is when they're not academically ready, they get discouraged, they drop out. The other is they don't feel engaged. So this is a terrific way of bringing those things together and of partnering businesses with their local schools. So we just think it's hugely encouraging, and it starts to get at that.
Okay. Our last question is from Carmen Velasquez, and it deals with the whole issue of school-based health centers as a key in providing health care for children and for creating more attendance. Has your report dealt with anything on that?
You know, it's a really good point. So you'll see in the report that we really do try to get beyond just sort of narrow test scores and academic, and we try to pay attention to the environment that schools are creating for kids and that children are learning in and that teachers are teaching in. And so you'll see there's a bunch of those factors listed. We have not gotten into some of that, our health services available, and some of the kinds of services that good community schools provide to kids and to families. And that's something I suspect we're going to be looking at going forward. I will say the newly redesigned report card that the state puts out for every school in every district, and they just got released, the old form got released last month, the new one will be coming out next fall, actually does start to do that. There's space on that. It's a nice two-sided single sheet, very user-friendly, really good, punchy, relevant information, but there is space set aside so that parents will know what those services, facilities might look like in their school and in their district. So we're moving in that direction, and stay tuned, we'll try to do better next time.
How about a good round of applause for our